Shrimad Bhagavad Gita Chapter number 5, verse number 21. Bahyasparsheshu asaktatma vindanti atmani yat sukham sah brahma yoga yuktatma sukham akshayam ashnute. This verse is highly esoteric and directly appears to fall in exclusive spiritual parlance. But I have tried to understand it with a different context as well, that has a connotation with our normal, ordinary lives. Before that, let us come down to understand what exactly it wants to convey. In the capacity of a teacher, I choose to start from this part as number 1, then come down to this part as number 2, and then ultimately come down over here to part number 3. This says Sukham Akshayam Ashnute. Sukham. I am writing it in English now. Sukham. The nearest word which I can approximate to Sukham is happiness. That's the only word I can, to some extent, try and create as the most approximate to this word Sukham, happiness. Next one could be blissful state. And there could be many more words that may appear to approximate, but this as number 1 and this as number 2 as the understanding conveyed by the word Sukham. It says Sukham Akshayam Ashnute. Happiness that is Akshayam, A-K-S-H-Y-A-M, Akshayam. It means something which is never ending, immutable, cannot be altered, cannot be changed. It is the way it is forever. It shall remain the same forever. The word Akshay means that something that is going to stay there forever. In this material world, as we understand, anything to everything from matter to even life in different forms, it is prone to death, disintegration, decay. Whereas we are talking about a concept which generally the ordinary mind cannot easily comprehend, and that is something which is there for eternity. Something there for eternity. Which will never mutate, which will never decay, which will never disintegrate, that shall never disembark. That is called as Akshayam. It talks about such a state of happiness which is never ending, which flows to the corridors of eternity. In general parlance, in the visible world that you and me are based upon, cites everything which has a limit. Any happiness that we draw from any source which is external has its own constraint of the time limit. It cannot go beyond a particular phase of time. Why are these two words deployed here in this verse? Before I come down to the part number 2 and part number 3, let us understand the meaning that has been conveyed to a human about an eternal blissful state of happiness, which will never mutate, which will never cease to exist. What could be that state? In order to understand that, let me draw an inference from a different understanding about exalted human beings. All those beings that have now transcended into an exalted state. Those who have now been able to touch a higher dimension of awareness. Higher dimension of awareness. Those exalted ones. What do they experience? as the scriptures mention, and we have been hearing it from different sources as well, that the exalted ones, they have control upon anything and everything. There is nothing which is beyond the ambit of their control. They can govern, they can alter, they can manipulate anything. That means that they have absolute control in absolute terms upon anything and everything. Whether they exercise their intervention or not is a different subject. But yes, they do bear absolute control. The second thing is absolute knowledge. They bear such a galactic torch. They bear such a galactic torch that once they beam upon any subject, person, or whatever it may be, all corresponding information in entirety comes down to them. They know all they want to know. This needs a further elaboration. They know all about what all they intend to know. What a beautiful state of blissfulness that also has a promise to flow to the extents of eternity. They know all that they want to know. They just have to pick up the galactic torch of their own inner awareness, focus it on a person or a subject, and everything is unraveled, unleashed before them. All revelations come before them without any hindrance. We are not deviating from the subject because we have to understand what is the never-ending, immutable, blissful happiness, state of blissfulness and happiness that flows down to the extents of eternity. In order to understand this particular state, which a normal intellect shall not comprehend because it has never experienced it, we are taking an inference from the scriptures about the exalted ones that have escalated towards the higher dimensions of awareness. What do they observe? How are they more capacitated? The first capacity, as I've mentioned here, is having absolute control upon entirety around. Second is knowledge about anything and everything they intend to know about. And the third is growth, expansion. They experience a never-ending evolution. Their state of evolution is continuous, without any hindrance, without any blocks, without any hamperings. They go on evolving. They go on expanding. They achieve such a higher dimension where there are no limits. They have now kissed, they have now immersed in themselves into the limitless dimensions of the awareness. Thereby, their extents cross all limitations that could otherwise limit a human being. Now, these are the three capacities that the exalted states of higher dimension experience. Now, you and me, we are on a mortal plane where everything is prone to death, decay, and disintegration. Therefore, our control upon our situations of the life that we experience is also limited. We are in absolute control of our affairs in life at times, and at other moments we lose all control and everything goes bare, and we are absolutely in a wandering state, in a weird state. And there are moments when we experience a lot of knowledge, a lot of wisdom inside, but there are again moments when we fall like a pack of play cards and we appear to be ignorant about everything around. This is a very dismal kind of a picture experienced by ordinary human beings like me or anyone else, that we experience transitory control and a very transient positions where we experience as knowledge. At the other hand, we also appear to be growing in our life, expanding in our life, in our own mortal affairs, but there are moments where we feel that we are experiencing the moments of nonentity. We are none, we are no one, we are nowhere, we have accomplished nothing at all. So all these three states that otherwise are experienced by exalted ones as states of happiness and blissfulness for eternity are experienced by limited human beings on the mortal plane through their intellect, having limitations and constraints and hamperings. Lot many holdings are there when it comes to control upon affairs of a life. Lot many constraints when it comes to know about subjects that we interact every day. And there are all limitations to our growth. There are phases of life where we have the tide in an upsurge, and we have phases in life where the tide retreats back and it appears to be taking away everything that we had gathered. It's never that we experience a continuous state of escalation where we go on. We alleviate ourselves from all shortfalls and holdings, and we elevate. Alleviation means to get rid. Alleviate. To get rid. To get rid of. And elevate, we all know what elevate is. The pronunciation of both the word appears to be similar, of alleviation and elevate, whereas both are contrary. Alleviation means to get rid of, relinquish, shun away. Elevate means to grow, to escalate, to rise above, to rise upward. So we alleviate and we elevate, both at the same time at different phases of our lives. Whereas the exalted ones, no, they experience the same continuous growth, knowledge and control throughout. That is the difference. Now the exact context has to be brought in from where this verse has originated. The context is all those people, all those human beings that have relinquished the source of gathering inputs to their intellect. Generally, whatever we feed our mind or our intellect for the sake of understanding is through our sensory drivers. We have primarily 5 knowledge-oriented sensory drivers and 5 action-oriented sensory drivers. Let me talk about the knowledge-oriented drivers. Eyes, we see, we interact, we gather inputs. Nose, we smell, we gather inputs. Tongue, we taste, we gather inputs. Ears, we listen, we gather inputs. And touch, we feel, experience, and we gather inputs. This is how we interact with the world outside, and that's how we feed ourselves different inputs of information. And that has been termed here in Sanskrit in the verse as Bahaya Sparsheshu Asaktatma. Asaktatma means one who is relinquished. This particular word this verse is an opening. And at least 5 more verses to come after verse number 21 in chapter 5 are going to be in the same light, in a similar light. It has now transcended us towards a next higher dimension. It says that a normal human being is confined to the abilities of understanding by drawing inputs from sensory organs. What you're not able to listen, what you're not able to see, what you're not able to smell, what you're not able to taste, what you're not able to touch, you generally don't comprehend, you don't understand that. Whereas the exalted ones, they relinquish the source of their information, the source of their inference, the source of their understanding. All information drawing from the external output is blocked, and they open up into a new higher dimension of awareness within themselves. Through their own exercise, their own spiritual pursuit, their own sadhana is the spiritual pursuit. Through their own spiritual pursuit, they elevate to such a state where they are able to touch the unseen dimension. The unseen dimension where there is abundance and infinity of all that one would like to have in the balance of knowledge, control, and growth. It's not easy for us to understand, for the reason being that so far we have lived lives the way we have. Nor it is possible for us to press a button and open a window where we can immediately peep through and see the higher dimension and give an affirmation within ourselves that yes, it does exist. It's not possible. But yes, we cannot give it a denial, because there is a transitory or a transient experience that we all gather in a life, that we are able to cite certain inputs or experiences that cannot be established as a local reality. You and me both experience dreams, and we experience thousands and thousands of dreams. Yet, we cannot give a blanket denial that there are few dreams, maybe one or two in a year, or maybe one in 5 years, that appear to be having a whisper for something that is going to happen in the future. And the testimony is when they occur. Their occurrence becomes a testimony. And then we say that, yes, I had a dream, I had a vision about that, and it did occur. Same goes with the thoughts also. The thoughts do not originate in a human brain. Thoughts are merely kissed, touched, received or interacted by human brain, and then we are able to open and experience them within our own mental frame. Thoughts basically come from the higher mind. The cosmic mind is the original storehouse of creativity, which is infinite. All these small transient experiences have been there in your life, in my life. But since we are accustomed to live life externally, to gather inputs of information that we affirm and then we acknowledge and we establish in our understanding outside, therefore such experiences are observed but not heeded much notice. We don't heed them much notice with, we just observe them and shirk ourselves away and move on with the ordinary life. Here, the Gitaka, the one who has scripted Gita, tries to draw the attention of any commoner that if you are able to transcend into your inner awareness, the dimensions of your inner awareness, you come to touch such a zenith where you come and immediately become one with the Brahma Yoga Yuktatma. The cosmic entity can be kissed. You can immerse into the existential aspects of the cosmic entity. The moment you immerse into the existence of the cosmic entity, all these three, they start revealing before you like they would do towards the higher dimensions of the exalted beings. Although initially such experiences of the higher dimension do not come to stay, they come as transitory. But yes, their revelations in the form of flashes, they certainly authenticate its existence. That yes, there exists a different world where lies the effects beyond the turbulence and turmoil and the most disorganized, unpredictable world that we live into. The world you and me are confined to is to great extents unpredictable and a world of confusion which appears to be disorganized. Whereas behind the scene, the world that orchestrates for this turbulent oriented world is highly organized and highly works with the highest order of the system. How to be able to touch that is for a matter for everybody to think, probe, and adopt a particular spiritual exercise that can enable one confined to one's own inner world. So you can stay with yourself, you can then rather unfold all those layers, peel yourself off, and then layer after layer cross towards the sun inside. The sun means S-U-N, inside. And till the moments our observation, our comprehension is jeopardized, is paralyzed, whatever word you may use for the constraint or the limitations, to the extents of the Bahya Sparsheshu Asaktatma, to the moments that we are confined to draw inputs of information from sources that merely exist outside, we shall not be able to even have a feeler of this higher dimension experienced by exalted ones, where this eternity, the blissful state of happiness that flows in eternity, could be experienced. This was something which lies directly into the spiritual parlance. Let me draw an inference for the common human being, a professional who has to take vital decisions in life day in, day out, who has to discern, distinguish, discriminate between different facts in order to handle different situations, different people, and different subjects. For such a human being, it's vital, it's important that all aspects of the situation revealed before them through known and unknown sources. Known, unknown. For the known, it is all through the sensory organs and that others inform us. We read books, we read reports, we are able to hear something, etc. What about unknown? Something that travels down to us at the helm of our deepest understanding, that threshold where we generally interact with the intuitive aspects of the information. Those streaks of inputs of information, when they come at this threshold, that we term this, I mentioned it this, because this is the spot that according to the ancient Indian wisdom is the one from where we interact with the cosmic mind. The outflow and the inflow of the informational data that goes and comes in is through this particular chakra that we call as Bindu chakra. And we also call it as Shikha. Shikha is a word, Shikha, that we term it because generally we grow our hairs here in a form of a sense of awareness that yes, there is an important part in a body through which we correspond, we communicate with the cosmic mind. The known and the unknown aspects can be known even for deployment in our ordinary life, while decision making, while making up our mind, by creating perceptions, so that we do not eliminate any aspect which otherwise could elude our notices and factor it into our decision-making process. For all professionals, this is mandatory. So, what does it come down to? It comes down that pursuit of spiritual exercises is not only for the yogis that have confined to the distant places, they are confined into their own cocoons of spiritual aspiration, but it is essential, it's equally important for all those who have worldly objective to be cherished, who want to accomplish higher goals in their life, whether it be business, professional, or whatever it may be. The inner layers of the awareness need to be unraveled. Your technique could be any, depends upon you as an individual, for you to pick and choose, but technique is important. Unless that happens, you will not be able to relinquish your limitations to gather inputs of information from your sensory drivers. You will not be able to transcend and transgress that particular threshold from whereon this higher dimension of awareness is made available before you to gather inputs from the unknown dimension. We have this live classroom on Shrimad Bhagavad Gita every second and last Sunday. Morning 9:30 a.m. is for English, 7:30 a.m. is for the Hindi lecture. See you in the next lecture on verse number 22 that shall also flow in the similar light, chapter number 5, Shrimad Bhagavad Gita. Till then, Om Shanti, 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 Om.